Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah Kadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of the Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth with sincerity. And shout out to Yakims out there in the four corners of the earth proclaiming this truth. Barakah the Yahweh, Barakah the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah Kadash, Barakatam. So what they fail to admit is that their whole system is collapsing. All of it's collapsing. And oil's about to run out. Gasoline's about to go out. But they won't tell you that. You know, not on the mainstream, not on fuck news and all that. They'll tell you all is well. And that, but hey, on the alternative media, it's here. 250 years later, America's on the brink of collapse. See? And that's what the scriptures say, though. That how is the ham of the whole earth cut asunder, right? You know? How it fallen to the ground. Who did weaken the nations? See, America, Babylon the Great, has weakened all the nations. You know? But it's only got a short lifeline left as we're near the end of this man's kingdom and the beginning of ours. So let's just get into this, because a little bit of rant and rave from the base report from Stu Peters' network, and he's going into this basically, you know, about how, you know, they'll always amp up for Israel and expect a false flag possibly, you know, because they really, they plan a surprise attack against Iran this weekend. It's most likely that they will. Or at least within the next week. Yeah, they're not satisfied. They still want to go to war with Iran and do some more strikes. You know, because they still want to keep this thing going until they can do their ground invasion in the winter. Because it's just not, it's not going to work, you know, trying to send them in when it's hot as fuck. You know, because it's really hot in the Saudi Arabia desert. But those people ain't coming back. None of them are coming back.
Don't be among your countrymen. Don't be among your family and your friends. Don't go outside. It's dangerous outside. That's what this is. So I'm going to get outside over the weekend. I'm going to go check out the 250th birthday festivities. And, you know, if there was ever a time to say this, because every single year you turn on Fox News or CNN or any one of these self-gratifying corporate news networks, you turn them on around the 4th of July, and there is somebody up there standing on their soapbox giving you their big impassioned speech on why this year, of all years, the American people need to take up the mantle of the founders. And usually they link it to some kind of gay or some kind of foreign or some kind of overall subversive type of cause, some type of pro-Israel cause. You've got a lot of people, I mentioned Fox News, you've got a lot of people coming out of that ideological clique, posting up 4th of July messages, just letting everybody know, hey, don't bother celebrating July 4th, Goy, if you don't stand with Israel. Because as Mike Huckabee would tell us, the United States of America wouldn't exist with Israel, without Israel, which mathematically doesn't even make sense. You see, it's such a ridiculous idea.
But the Israeli state controls America, always has.
Yeah, America doesn't really exist because of Israel. Look at the state that this country is in 250 years after its birth. We just got a big subversive anti-white 250th birthday present from the Supreme Court just days ago as they upheld 14th Amendment birthright citizenship. The 14th Amendment, which is repugnant to this country in and of itself,
they don't like it when Israelites get rights.
This country, to make this country less white, to make this country less Christian. An amendment to the Constitution which was installed by Marxists in the first place, by 19th century Marxists in the first place.
You mean Freemasons?
Maybe with Israel, maybe with the people who claim to be the nation of Israel, this country doesn't stand as good of a chance of existing as it would without them. I don't think that's a maybe. I think that's a definite. I think that the proof is in the pudding. And on taking up that whole mantle, again, every year you get somebody making these impassioned pleas. I mean, at this point, it's now more than ever, like, legitimately, this country is inches away from teeter-tottering into a digital concentration camp.
There it is, right there. You see, like everything else, though, you know, with the Bill C-9, we're going to get into that a little bit today. Like I said, that passed last week in Canada, but Bill C-9, even though they don't call it that over here, it's making its way over here, and, well, you're going to see more and more censorship, like we did in 2020, but even worse. You know, eventually it's just going to be totally illegal to quote things out of the scriptures, bringing in the famine of the word. That's around the corner, which means that all hell's about to break loose and you ain't going to have any guidance whatsoever. But we, the elect, ain't going to be caught off guard by these things, right? You know, so get this while you still can. Download, save to your computer before they take it offline. You know, get this while you still can, because the famine of the word is right around the corner.
We are burning through our emergency oil cushion and pretending everything is just fine.
Yep.
According to our next guest, America's Strategic
out.
Petroleum Reserve is now at its lowest level since 1983,
yep.
essentially back to it was while it was still being filled to begin with. He calculates that we have enough for the American people to make it through October, except the military has first dibs with military requirements, so if they get the oil first,
they're wasting a lot of it.
He says this month. Meanwhile, oil prices have fallen. Markets are celebrating. President Trump is demanding that gas stations lower their price. But are we creating the illusion of cheap energy by draining the stockpile? And if we have another shock tomorrow, how much protection do we actually have? Chris Martinson joins us. He just read this 123-page government report, so you don't have to. And he's here to explain why he believes the numbers are far more alarming than the headlines suggest. Chris, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you, Natalie, and Clinton, good to be here. I also am a Virgo, so this will all just fit right in.
I mean, I'm just going to say, Chris.
Yeah, they love to look at their psycho signs.
I'm a Capricorn here, so I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. When I saw Chris's tweet about this a short time ago, I read the 123-page report on the petroleum. I'm like,
here we go. This is where it gets interesting.
So, okay, break it down for us. You've done a beautiful job of looking at what the government has actually said that we have, how much we have drained. Can you let us know how this works and what the numbers actually say?
Well, sure. So, every nation needs oil, and smart nations keep a strategic stockpile of it. And so when we got caught short in 1973, 74, with the Arab oil embargo, and Congress got together and said, let's do something about that. So we started filling holes in the ground with oil, and we call it our strategic petroleum reserve. Now, there's other ways you can do that. Some countries put it in tanks above ground, but we found these salt caverns that were left over from, Morton salt, taking salt out that, went on our table. And they had these big holes in the ground, so they filled them up with oil, and when they ran out of spaces for that, they started making new salt caverns. And so there are 4 big strategic petroleum reserve sites all on the Gulf Coast. And across all 4 of them, there are actually 60 of these little holes in the ground. And they were all topped up right before 2022, when, of course, there was the first big drawdown of the SPR under Biden because of I called it the strategic political reserve at that point. Ostensibly, the reason was they wanted to control oil prices because of the Ukraine-Russia war. But, of course, it was also an election season. So we really tapped into it then. Trump started to fill it back up a little bit, not too much. And then, of course, the Iran war, and now we've just been draining it down again. And as you mentioned, Natalie, we have the last time we were at this level of storage was 1983, and that was when we were on the upswing. We were filling it. At that point in time, we filled it for, 12, 15 years.
And so I did find a picture of what you were talking about, these salt caverns. You say if we actually want to get it out, we have to pump salt water in and then bring it out, but we can't bring all of it out. We have to leave some in, or else the cavern collapses. And also, the military has first dibs. So that's why we can't rely on what we have in totality, even though what we have in totality right now is still quite low.
Well, it is. So there's a level, there's a statutory minimum, and there's some rules around all of this. Of course, Washington, everything's got a policy or rule. But the rule says that unless it's like some declared emergency, which we're not in right now, you have to leave 243 million barrels in there. And that's the floor. You can't go below that unless the DoD comes in and signs off and says, okay, they have right of first refusal on that. So it's kind of unlikely to me that any clear-headed military person would say, sure, go ahead, just tap that all the way down. We're fine. If something happens with China, don't worry about it. We'll run our tanks on electricity or batteries or something. I don't think they would do that, but they always could. But if we draw that line at 243 million barrels, we've only got another 80 million barrels to go after last week's draw. So that gives us just a few weeks here at this current rate before it's completely gone.
There we go. Just a few more weeks. They ain't ready for this, and they're not talking about that on the mainstream. That's going to catch a lot of people off guard. And it's going to lead to the government shutdown coming down in October, right? Because they definitely ain't going to pass any fucking budget because, shit, they're out of oil. You see how everything's ushering it in? You see that they got the crisis. Now they just need to order the chaos. Especially after a false flag restarting the war. And that's where we're at now. And you got DJ Trump, fucking off the allies once again, demanding Germany's loyalty. Germany rejects Trump's demand for loyalty. NATO does not run on blind obedience. Defense Minister Pistorius stated after U.S. President said he is disappointed with the bloc. German Defense Minister rejected U.S. President Trump's demand for loyalty from other NATO members, insisting that no member state should impose its will on the others. So, there's a big division within NATO. And these are going to hate the horn burner with fire. That's what it's all leading to. But, going to get more into this Bill C-9 as, we first covered it, and now, alternative media, World Alternative Media is also covering it. Just a total digital gulag agenda, which is, to pretty much usher in the digital all. The digital all, a code word for you know what. And That's what it's all about, is to have full control. To where you own nothing and you be happy, right? And you, whatever you say can and will be used against you. See, this devil Esau's looking to bring up charges against you, because it's time to shut it all down. And they're scared because we know who we are and we know who they are. So, without further ado, Bill C9, and what this means is this ushers in the famine of the word, and just pretty much to clamp down on everything you say can and will be used against the court of law. You've heard that before when they arrest you, and Esau's making this case against you, aka Amalek, because that's who the attorneys are, and that's who the whole system is centered around. Even the badge has that, what they call the Star of David, but it really means something else. Pretty much though, that badge, that, they're going to hold you in contempt, right? They're going to try you, but like everything else though, some of us will be tried for 10 days, right? But, you just got to put your faith and trust in Yahweh Shai. But a famine of the word is around the corner, and they're building their case against us, because they've been exposed and there's no getting around it. Now they're after us like Mad Men, right?
Hey everybody, Josh Anderson, World Alternative Media here, and have you heard of Bill C8? Well, it's heard of you, because of course Bill C8, if you haven't yet heard of it, is a bill being pushed forward to essentially spy on every single thing you do on a daily basis if you are in Canada and you use the internet. Warrantless wiretapping and information collection. And of course, it has now gone through and it is in the books, and now they can control everything that you search on the internet. Now, of course, they've already done this before. This is something that they've been doing for a long time, but now it's legal, quote unquote. Whatever legal means these days. Today we're going to go into Bill C8 and also some of the other bills coming in Canada, and also, on top of that, these crazy acts being put forward in the United States, and there are quite a few of them, and as well in the UK. They are building up the new ration digital ID system that I've been warning of for so long. People say, hey,
the digital
little sky is falling, but they're doing this stuff, and people want to pretend that it's nothing, that we'll just sit on our hands and wait for it to be over with. This is real, and it affects every single person watching out there. So we're going to get into this and more today, but before we do, I urge people to check those links below. It is my birthday, and I am sick as a dog with a cold. Oh, and also, if you use code WHAM50, something I want to get into today. So, Bill C8
here we go.
Was previously another bill that had been pushed along and failed, but of course has come back and has been brought to fruition as of June. And Canada's Bill C8 is now getting the green light, and of course with one signature, it now lets the government collect your location, your browsing history, and your metadata without ever asking a judge. We're talking about a kill switch. They can shut off your internet if you do not comply. They can, if you say something online that they don't like, they can shut you down. If you say something online that they don't like, or you do something
you say can and will be used against you. See where it's going.
You've said something. Maybe you've said something to a friend at work who reports you, because yes, we are living in crazy times like that, especially in Canada.
Yep, friends will betray each other.
Down. They can take all of your data, every site you've ever gone to, warrantlessly. They can essentially use it against you in a court of law if they want to.
Yep.
They can essentially force identification. All your metadata, everything is on the table. Nothing is private. So, as it says, Canada's, and this is out of reclaimthenet.org, by the way, they do a lot of good work. Canada's new cybersecurity law gives a cabinet minister the power to order any telecom provider to cut off service to a named person without a warrant, without prior judicial approval, and under a gag order that can prohibit the provider from explaining why. That power is now live. The law also creates, warrantless data collection authorities broad enough to scoop up subscriber information, metadata, location data, and browsing history. It was supposedly written to protect critical infrastructure, whatever that means, but what it built is a surveillance machine with almost no independent checks on how it gets used. Interesting how this is the case everywhere in the world at the same time. And we're going to be going into some examples from the U.S. because there is an absolute insane act that just got pushed forward called the Kids Online Safety Act. So we'll be getting
there it is there.
But what is the law? C8 carries the formal title, an act respecting cybersecurity. It replaces Bill C26, which died on the order paper when the previous Parliament was prorogued, and was reintroduced in substantially the same form. Excuse me, I do have a cold. The bill ran two parts through Parliament. The first rewrites the Telecommunications Act so that security is an explicit policy objective and gives the government direct authority over carriers. The second creates the Critical Cyber Systems Protection Act, imposing mandatory cybersecurity obligations on operations in banking, energy, transportation, and the nuclear sector. This sounds a lot like something forward a little while back. By the way, The telecom powers are already enforced,
They freeze your bank accounts.
Regime will roll out in phases.
They didn't like what you said.
Under the amended Telecommunications Act, the Minister of Industry can prohibit a telecommunications service provider from providing any service to any specified person, or direct a provider to suspend service for a set period. The order takes effect once the minister signs it after consultation with the Minister of Public Safety. No court reviews it beforehand. That's absolutely crazy. These orders bypass the normal regulatory publication path because the Statutory Instruments Act does not apply to them. An order can include a provision prohibiting the disclosure of its existence. So a person can lose phone and internet access while the provider is legally forbidden from telling them why. And the Act states that no one is entitled to any compensation for financial losses an order causes. Oh, they're definitely going to do this to me. The government added a carve-out for individuals, barring orders that suspend an individual's service unless the measure is necessary against any specified threat of a technical nature. This is just so insane. That limit covers only the suspension power. The broader prohibition authority reaches any specified person with no restriction. Open Media's executive director, Matt Hatfield, said before the bill passed, there is no such thing as a private intercepted message and no backdoor that exists only for law enforcement. Our government knows it, yet their draft cybersecurity legislation bill, C-8, can be abused to surveil Canadians in secret well beyond its legitimate purposes. You know, I've said for a long time, they don't need to do it through government. They can actually do it through these private corporations and put them in a place where, again, they are incorporated with government. Canada doesn't really have a Bill of Rights. It was overwritten. The Bill of Rights signed by Diefenbaker in 1962 has been overwritten by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms pushed by Pierre Trudeau. Back, I believe, in 69.
Yeah, Trudeau.
It's like they can pick and choose what rights people can or cannot have, which tells you there are no actual rights. Warrantless data collection says Section 15.4
Except your right to remain silent.
Administer an open-ended power to compel any person to hand over information the minister considers necessary, with no requirement for a warrant or prior judicial authorization. The Citizen Labs Senate brief called this an unprecedented warrantless power to collect telecommunications data and to share this information widely across the federal government, including with CSIS and the Communications Security Establishment. Now, CSIS is like the NSA of Canada, for those that are from outside of the country. As a matter of constitutional law, Citizen Lab argued the power is presumptively contrary to Section 8 of the Charter because it would authorize the collection of information that is subject to a reasonable expectation of privacy without prior independent judicial authorization. The Privacy Commissioner warned during testimony that the law could result in the collection and sharing of subscriber account information, communication data, website visits, metadata, location data, and financial data, which, by the way, I will mention a bit later when it comes to the U.S. because we have a very similar situation happening there. The Intelligence Commissioner of Canada also weighed in. The glaring absentee in this bill is the Canadian public. He said the information that is collected is Canadians' personal information. He characterized warrantless seizure of private information as a constitutional issue the bill had failed to resolve. The bill's minimal safeguards include a requirement that the minister weigh potential impacts of the privacy of Canadians before issuing orders. Do not even apply to these collection powers. Wow. Encryption and backdoors. C8's order-making powers are broad enough to force telecom companies to weaken or bypass encryption. The minister can order a provider to do anything or refrain from doing anything deemed necessary to secure the telecom system, language that does not exclude orders to install surveillance capabilities or degrade encryption standards. Writing in the Globe and Mail, Citizen Labs Kate Robertson and Ron Dieberg warned that the bill's secretive encryption-breaking powers would threaten the online security of everyone in Canada and that it empowers government officials to secretly order telecommunications companies to install backdoors inside encrypted elements in Canada's networks. The government did introduce amendments stating the minister must not order the decoding of an encrypted private communication. That language prohibits one specific action, decoding, while leaving the broader order-making power intact. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association's Tamir Israel said the fix was insufficient. By failing to guarantee critical end-to-end encryption protocols will not be undermined, Bill C-8 risks doing more harm than good to cybersecurity. It's always under the guise of stopping, cyber attacks or, nefarious criminals.
Yeah.
When the real nefarious criminals happen to be in your government doing this to you. They're the ones actually doing the thing that they're creating the bill in order to, and they claim, to stop. It is insane. Secrecy by design. It says operators receiving cybersecurity direction are prohibited from disclosing its existence or content. The minister can keep orders out of the Canada Gazette. Judicial review proceedings operate under rules that let the government present evidence that the target never sees. Committee amendments that would have required prior judicial authorization for orders and transferred non-disclosure decisions to the courts were adopted, then removed by a speaker's ruling before final passage. Amazing. Israel called this a secrecy by default approach that poses an additional threat to privacy and other civil liberties. Citizen Lab argued
kind of funny.
Provisions restrict public and media scrutiny.
Israeli states all over it.
Section 2B,
and that's what really
for orders that
is behind everything.
Must notify 2 intelligence review bodies within 90 days, and the act requires an annual report to Parliament. That is a total extent of the transparency obligation. So who does this bill who does this bill actually affect? I'm not going to go into everything in this whole article, but the government's own charter analysis argued that privacy interests are diminished in regulatory and administrative contexts.
It's long.
Citizen Lab disputed this directly, arguing that the bill is reforming Canada's national security laws and powers and will impact the privacy interests of people across Canada who are not regulated companies. Telecom providers carry Canadians' most private communications. The people whose data flows through those networks are not regulatory subjects, and their privacy interests are not diminished because the company carrying their data is. Excuse me. Now, I do want to point out, this is always how they were planning to collect this kind of information. This system of these telecom providers, the way they built up digital infrastructure to such a great extent, was always about eventually handing over that information. Oh, well, constitutionally, they are not the same as the government collecting it, so therefore they can get around that in that situation when the government goes after a corporation, saying that it's for security concerns and making them offload all of their information to them. They're already doing this, like I said, but this makes it law. The critical infrastructure part applies to, it says, designated operators in telecom, banking, energy, transportation, and the nuclear sector. Those operators must build formal cybersecurity programs within 90 days, manage supply chain risk, boom, 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 rations, and report to the communications security establishment within 72 hours. Penalties run as high as $15 million per violation.
The universal basic income is based upon that.
Channels for personal and confidential information to flow to provincial governments, foreign states, and international organizations under written arrangements. The Privacy Commissioner urged safeguards on foreign sharing and called for a mandatory process to notify the office of breaches and incidents involving internationally shared information. The final law does not include that process. Now, we already know that most of this stuff is already sent off to China. Honestly, and people get freaked out about that, but it's like, I'm more worried about my own government holding all this information against me and using it against me in one way or another for a social credit system in the future, because this is all creating the image for the future social credit system. The whole idea is that they have a system of governance that's digital that they can base your personality off of so that they can decide what credits are allotted to you and what you're allowed to have, do, travel to, eat, whatever it might be. And so this is extraordinarily dangerous considering the implications of the government, siphoning all this information from these companies. Now, Canada already has things like the Emergency Planning Act sections 18 and 18.1 that in the case of an emergency, and I've been talking about this for 5 years now, it was signed off on in Saskatchewan, Canada, where they can warrantlessly arrest you, steal your information, spy on you, kill you, take your children away, kill your livestock, eat your livestock, take your home as their own property, destroy your home, whatever they want to do. Basically, it's open season on whatever is in your life. They can do the most atrocious things and get away with it because under the guise of an emergency, quote unquote, they can do whatever they want. And this new legislation tells me this is only escalating further, as we all knew, because we knew that things were going digital, and in order to get to that digital ID system, they had to do all this. They're unleashing the Canadian age verification stuff online already, which we've done extensive work breaking down. They're doing it in almost every country in the world. All a Trojan horse. We'll get to that more in a moment too. But the idea is that they're creating a system out of emergencies that they created in the first place to bring in what they call the New World Order. And that New World Order will be based in digital technocracy, where you get credits for the food that they have rationed to you because they've destroyed farms, they've destroyed the economy, they put you in a place of crisis, and of course, with the wars and everything else going on, the supply chain is absolutely devastated. So hey, the only way you can get this food is by behaving and doing what the government says, and just rat on your neighbor if they do something bad. You might be able to get meat instead of the lab-grown stuff that they want to give you.
So you see where this is, right? It causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive the MOTB in their hand or in their foreheads, right? That pretty much so your compliance is required, and that's what it's all leading to, the digital all, And so you got more going on, right? And that was just C8. That doesn't even get into C9. C9 is where you're not allowed to, apply biblical scriptures, which really has to do with us going out there and teaching. So you see how quickly things are approaching. A famine of the word is around the corner. India plans VPN crackdown. Now, VPNs are virtual private networks that where you record, you can go through a proxy server network and you can hide your IP address, but nonetheless though, they're going after VPNs. New Delhi is planning regulations to control VPN providers, including requiring them to appoint compliance officers. Basically, you got to disclose who you are You know, so that way they can still know what you're doing at all times. So a VPN wouldn't even matter at this point. That's what they're looking to do. India is planning to introduce a legal framework that would control virtual private networks operating in the country. New measures would require VPN providers to set up local office and appoint compliance officers to address issues raised by the government. So pretty much so. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You see where this is all going, right? But like everything else, though, Russia is winning the war. And Ukraine has been wiped out in retaliatory strikes after Russia, you know, you already know about the Resnik missiles, but they have many more missiles. And as Chris Green says, they will nuke the shit out of Babylon as soon as they make their attacks against Iran. You know, you see how close we are to that. In other words, DJ Trump is limited to what he can do. You know, anything else is going to unleash World War III. And they will. You know, he's going to ultimately do what King Bibi says. This war is coming, but before that, the digital all has to be mandated. And you see how around the corner we are with it.
I've got a code red news alert here for you. Ukraine screwed up. As soon as they started sending missiles and drones deep into Russian territory, into Moscow, the president of the country of Russia went in a closed-door meeting and said it was time to attack Ukraine. It was time to reach deep into their territory, and we are one step short of what Russia perceives as a threat against their sovereignty and their full right to use nuclear weapons. Let's see some of the destruction that is happening right now. These are massive overnight Russian missile and drone attacks deep into Ukrainian territory. Now, folks, these are no small events. This is one step short of nuclear war. And we're watching it play out right now as thousands of people, look at the smoke, look at the clouds from the destruction. Thousands of people, and you see that this is nighttime cities, and no one is outside. You see nobody in their windows. They know that this might be it. Now, look at this next video. Massive amounts of destruction deep inside of Ukrainian territory. And this is not stopping here. Here's Moscow without gasoline and now without power. This video shows the impact of the gas shortages and fuel shortages that are taking place there. You can see individuals just lined up miles deep trying to get, and they're only allowed. This is what America is going to look like. As soon as there became
he's
a problem,
right about that.
Officials came out and said you may get 4 liters of gasoline. 4 liters. In some cases, you might be able to get 8 liters of gasoline. You're talking about 2, 3, 4, 6 gallons of gasoline. Imagine your everyday life forced to continue as you know it today. And you're only able to fill up your tank with 2 to 4 gallons of gasoline. Where are you going? You're not going to work. Your kids aren't going to school. You're not going to get groceries. You had better get what you can get inside of your vehicle and evacuate. We're also seeing people use saws like Sawzalls to rip open their car because they're not allowed. It's illegal right now to fill up anything except a vehicle. So people are actually installing these secondary gas tanks, which they're only using the red fuel cans that you can get at Walmart or you can get at the gas station, the emergency cans that you use in case you run out of fuel on the road.
Yep.
And they're actually installing them into their vehicle so that when they fill up their vehicle, they move right over to the secondary unit and they start filling up what looks like their vehicle. We're also seeing massive amounts of theft of gas.
Yeah, like Mad Max.
One of the strongest pillars of our partnership. In recent years, Azerbaijan has proven to be a reliable, trusted energy partner to the European Union.
Now, the European Union and NATO, they just put out that warning by their intelligence agencies in the last 5 days. That warning said that Russia will be attacking by 2027. Guys, it is July. 6 months left until we hit 2027, and they're saying that Russia is going to attack NATO countries. If a NATO country gets attacked, Article 5 gets enacted, or at least that's how we understood it, right? No one actually used this and tried it, because when Donald Trump attacked Iran and said, hey, we need your help, NATO said, well, maybe it'd be better if you guys do that on your own, and we're just going to maybe sit back and watch and see what happens. So what if Poland gets hit? Germany? What if other countries inside of NATO get attacked? Will America come to their aid?
Fuck no.
What if Russia says, America, if you aid them, we're sending the Satan II missiles to Washington, D.C., Tampa, Florida, CENTCOM headquarters, Dallas, Texas, California, even though some people might say, hey, go ahead.
It's inevitable.
So we are watching
the Valley of
World War
Jehoshaphat
III take place before our eyes. Look at this. This is, I had to dig deep, and I was like, no, this has got to be some sort of artificial image, but it's not. This person is putting a video from their phone over past their sleeping baby as the bombs drop in the background. You hear gunfire. You see the smoke rising. Now let me know in the comments, are you evacuating? Because I'm GTFO. I am getting the freak out of the area as soon as the attack started. And you might say, okay, well, where do you go, Brad? You already live in the middle of the woods. Obviously, you already have a trespasser issue. We showed that on yesterday's afternoon video. So where do you go? Well, I had a plan for that. My
yeah,
plan for
I know.
Is
dig themselves into hell, right?
Inside of areas that it is not worth going to look at. And that's my plan. Here's the President, Vladimir Putin. He's discussing what's actually going on. And I'm going to read
например, прекращение ударов вглубь территории советских сторон, например. И понятно, почему делается это предложение, потому что наши ответные удары вглубь территории.
Now, this is Putin discussing the retaliatory strikes that are deep inside of Ukrainian territory. Here's the drones striking the transportation networks. You see, they're going to close down the vehicle travels. They're going to close down resupplies. They'll close down food warehouses. They're already shutting down the ability to get fuel. Power goes out. There's guys in the streets with anti-drone and anti-aircraft defenses walking through the streets. There's machine gun fire, tracers at night. This is all happening while children sleep in their bed.
So you can see everything's amped up over there. At the same time while pretending to have peace with Iran, right?
Now this is massive.
Even though they're planning a surprise attack against Iran this weekend.
I guess watched Zombieland, right? What's the rule? Which rule number is it in Zombieland? Double tap.
Yep.
You see, this is a very common military
like they did with the girls'
They
school.
assessed that their strike package did not hit the intended target. They hit it again. And so when you see these people sitting around watching the destruction after a missile or a drone just struck an area, they have no idea that another one might be on its way. And so watching the devastation is not in your best interest. Here we have Ukraine striking Russia's one of their largest oil refineries.
All being done on purpose to usher in the New World Order.
Now you're looking at a 4 to 8 month return to normal at one refinery. If you start to couple that with tens of or dozens of refineries getting hit, gas stations are being attacked right now. We're seeing individual gas stations attacked. And what they're doing is they're using a missile or they're using a more well-coordinated drone system to hit the refinery. Now you knock that out for 8 months. And then you use the smaller stuff or even sabotage to take out the gas stations. So now you have no ability to refuel. Where are you going to go if you only have what's left in your tank right now?
Дуже неприємно про підготовку чергового такого російського масового удару.
Immediately after this was happening live as the leadership in Ukraine said that they had just got information that Russia was going to attack deep into Ukrainian territory. They picked up their stuff and they left immediately to get back into the shelters inside of Ukraine. Now I do have some video here I was hoping to get to of those shelters. It's pretty scary. Here's one video. Now look at this video. You've got children sitting there, some of them looking on their phones. A lot of them are scared. Now what we're witnessing right now in real time is a return towards the public saying, take them out. Whether it's the American people saying, go into Iran and wipe them out and let's go ahead and gather up everything we need to. Let's deal with this once and for all. It's nothing compared to the Russians inside of Moscow that just got hit. Russia is not a country that you want to screw with. China is not a country that you want to screw with. Messing around with Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, okay, that's child's play. But now we're talking about World War III. And we're watching it together.
And that's just it. The Third World War cometh quickly. Even he knows this because Russia will not allow Iran to fall. You see? But there's more. You know, Turkey is also an ally of Russia. Gog and Magog is going to become more involved. And we got this going on this week. You know, they are officially martyring Ayatollah Khamenei. And Iran's intelligence ministry vows to avenge martyred leaders' blood. You know, because like everything else, though, Iran's coming together. And they know who their enemy is. And they want to get rid of these Israelis and the U.S. for what they've fucking done. And it's about time that they have vengeance. The bloodthirsty American Zionist enemy committed the greatest crime and terrorist conspiracy in contemporary history in this great tragedy. Statement reads, the wounded hearts of the brave Iranian people and freedom lovers worldwide will find no relief or solace except those avenging the perpetrators of this crime. The ministry said, adding that according to divine promise, the retribution and punishment will be realized. So like everything else, so they will never forget. You know how Babylon the Great, which was an inside job, did 9/11, and it said never forget 9/11. They are never going to forget what they did to Ayatollah Khamenei. This was an inside job, just like 9/11 was. It was an inside job by the Israelis in Iran. So like everything else, though, they want blood. You know? Statement emphasized that the intelligence ministry's operatives, in honoring the martyred leader and other martyrs of his household, call on the martyr-loving Iranian nation to participate in the epic farewell ceremony for the martyred imam. They also reaffirmed their covenant with leader Ayatollah Sayyid Mossadegh Khamenei and the Iranian people to avenge the blood of the martyred leader and martyrs of the last two U.S.-Israeli aggressions against Iran. See, they want vengeance. And these are the days of vengeance that are spoken of in the New Testament. Why, Yahweh Shai? The days of vengeance are at hand. You see? And it's a righteous vengeance that they want. Iran prepares for Khamenei's funeral and warns the U.S. against interfering in Hormuz. Yeah. So anything right now would just provoke further. But you already know that they are planning a surprise attack against Iran. Over 20 million people are estimated to arrive in Tehran for the funeral of former Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, killed at the start of the U.S.-Israeli war. Ceremonies begin Saturday in Tehran and end on the 9th of July with the former Supreme Leader laid to rest in Mashhad. So I got a little bit of footage of this in just a second here. But, you know, you can see how big the gathering is by this picture. Farewell ceremony for martyred leader officially began in Tehran. This is on the 4th of July, today. The event, which started in the first hours of Saturday, transformed to the Masala into a sea of grief and devotion as millions gather for a final farewell to the martyred leader. According to the headquarters for the ceremony of the martyred leader Ascension, the farewell ceremony will begin through Sunday at the Grand Imam Khamenei Masala. So we'll play some of these. I think they're all on here. Hopefully it plays. Yeah, it's not letting me blow them up. Yeah, anytime I do that, it just fucks up. But you can see they very much are in music, and they're mourning their leader. Does that sound trivial? Does that sound like what we do as the natives here? AKA the Northern Kingdom, when a leader dies? Where do you think they learned that from? See, we were in joint rulership with them during our captivity under Persia. So they are given a metronome for their leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. And there's more here, you know, as press TV highlights. I did get it to work, but it seemed like they were going to shut it down for a while.
Secretary General has expressed condolences to the Iranian government and nation for the martyrdom of leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei. Tony Guterres, speaking in a phone call with Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, where the two discussed some regional developments as well, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, and also implementation of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding with regard to Israeli attacks on Lebanon. Were also discussed. Iran's top diplomat and the UN chief also reviewed latest developments between Tehran and Washington with respect to the situation of indirect talks between the two.
So, like everything else,
UN Secretary General has expressed condolences to the Iraq.
Iran's military warns continued presence of U.S. aircraft over Hormuz Strait threatens regional security, you know, because they keep on breaching it. Iranian military on Thursday warned that continued presence of U.S. manned and unmanned aircraft over the strait, aka drones, has caused insecurity in this waterway and will threaten regional security. The strait is not a playground for an aggressive Babylon but the undisputed sovereign domain of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Security and stability of this vital waterway are a red line for the powerful armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So, like everything else, basically they're telling Babylon they better knock off their shit. Iran has maintained the wording of the MOU means it's solely responsible for traffic through the strait, and that any arrangements not involved in violate the agreement. Tehran is also not dropping its insistence that its future ships traveling through the strait will pay a service fee. Iranian military has been put on high alert ahead of the funeral of the country's former supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei. Funeral services start today on the 4th of July as the U.S. will celebrate its bullshit 250 years. And it's going to last several days. Yeah, because when they really martyr a leader, they take a while. Just like you would if somebody close to you did. I mean, it took me almost nearly a whole year just to even martyr my father. That took me over a year. I just lost Allie, my Pomeranian, 16 years. I'm not over her yet. Yes, I have another Pomeranian, multi-pom, but I still am grieving the loss. I'm not over her, and you don't get over things like that, But like everything else, you just take it day by day, So it takes a while to martyr someone, and that's all biblical, by the way. There's a time, there's a time to mourn, And we're in the house of mourning, by the way, we're not in the house of mirth. We're not going out and celebrating this bullshit. Yeah, we see others fucking doing it, but we're doing what we can. We're getting our shit, and then we're staying at home, and we're staying with the ones that we love, and not even participating in this bullshit. Because we know that this is nothing more than a slavery, our slavery. Why would we commemorate going into captivity? No, we want to get out of this captivity. See, that's the mindset of an elect versus the 2/3 that want to participate in this bullshit. U.S. Navy tests 3D printed composite patches to speed up F-18 fighter jet repairs. So they use a 3D printing, which, as you know, 3D printing is just a faster way of fixing stuff. You can do it for lots of stuff, but they're using it for their military, of course. Naval Air Warfare Center Aircraft Division and Fleet Readiness Center Southwest has co-developed a 3D printed composite repair method designed to reduce F-18 Super Hornet maintenance times by approximately 50%. So it's actually going to speed up production, which is the whole purpose in having a 3D printer. Also, the Navy faces a drop in critical combat readiness as it struggles to keep up with fighter jet repairs. Yeah, it takes time to repair this, and they still want to, they want to get everything ready to go later this year. And they may do a surprise attack against Iran this weekend. That's not out. Israeli jets entered Iran to attack negotiator plane after Islamabad talks. Oh, so it looks like they already went in. D.C. warned Tehran that Israeli state could target Agashi, and Gulf Spain made emergency landing. So, yeah, the Israelis are planning to take out more leaders. They're going after the big ones. Israeli jets entered Iranian airspace as Tehran's top negotiators were engaged in diplomatic efforts with the U.S., according to New York Times. Report says that American officials feared Israeli state was plotting to kill 2 senior Iranian officials involved in the peace negotiations. So they were actually trying to take out Agashi and Galif, which you already know are the 2 major ones. According to New York Times, D.C. was concerned that an Israeli assassination attempt could derail the talks and asked regional countries to warn Iran about the potential threats. They're acting like they're the good cop. The good cop, bad cop scenario. That's really bad cop, because Trump is just another Amalekite anyways. U.S. believed Israeli state wanted to kill Iran's Agashi and Galif during April negotiations. So even it goes as far back as then. Report, which cited U.S. officials, said that the U.S. agreed that Agashi and Galif could have been targets for Israeli assassinations during the full-scale war, as the U.S. strongly backed Israeli assassinations, but that it was concerned that killing them during negotiations could have derailed the diplomatic process. So they're admitting that the Israeli state has been targeting these two. And the only reason for that is because they got to give you this shit show that, they're in disagreement with King Bibi. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're planning a surprise attack with the Israeli state while pretending to be fighting with King Bibi. It's all smoke and mirrors, as we've exposed, right? Expel the Sunni and Shiites. Settler project for Greater Israel sets its sights on Syria. As the Israeli state deepens its hold in southern Syria, settlers want to transform the occupied territory into a new frontier. Yeah, they want the Greater Israel project. A group of Israeli terrorists gathered along the fence separating the occupied Golan Heights from southern Syria in mid-May. Some chained themselves to the barrier, while at least 10 crossed into Syrian territory near the town of Majib Shams at the foot of Mount Hernon. Iran's military later confirmed that soldiers returned the civilians to Israeli territory and apprehended them, transferring them to the Israeli pigs. But like everything else, though, these settlers, these terrorists, well, they're just carrying out what was already there. So we'll play some of this from Middle East.
On the 8th of December 2024, the world watched Syria celebrate.
Yep, as ISIS took over.
Assad was gone. But while the world focused on Damascus, something else was happening 60 kilometers to the south. Israeli forces were crossing the 1974 ceasefire line, a boundary that had held for half a century, and within 48 hours, they had captured 350 square kilometers of Syrian territory. That's bigger than cities such as Milan, San Francisco, and even Paris. Nobody really noticed, and that was exactly the point. Since then, a Syrian monitoring group called the Sigil Center has been tracking what's happening on the ground. According to its records, more than 1,600 documented military violations inside Syria territory, a number that surged sharply after the start of the US-Israeli war on Iran. The head of Sigil Center, Hamza Vadban, described Israeli expansion.
It spans from Mount Hermon in the north and to the Yarmouk Basin in the south and 15 kilometers into the depths of Syria. So you kind of have this triangle that is the hot spot for Israeli activities in Syria.
Within that triangle, Israel has now built military bases. Satellite images from late 2024 to late 2025 show a chain of fortified outposts running the full length of the Quneitra countryside, where more than 80% of all violations were concentrated. In northern Quneitra, 250 hectares of forest and farmland were demolished. In the village of Al-Hamidiyya alone, 16 homes were razed for a new military base. That equals to 12 families displaced. The area was later turned into a monitoring and control point west of the Providence Center. Israeli forces seized the western Red Hill, and that's a strategic high point with the obstructed sightings deep into Syrian interior. Israel has also established 4 military gates which it used to construct a continuous geographic security belt. From these gates, Israeli forces have been conducting night raids, entering homes, detaining civilians, gathering residents at checkpoints, and committing verbal abuse and physical brutality. Then, the ecocide, a systematic spraying of unidentified chemical substances, killing livelihoods and withering large swaths of land, was recorded. Hundreds of farmers and sheep herders have been directly affected. Adban said such actions constitute
so poisoning
of silently displaced people by killing their means of living, their income sources. And now, Israel is building what it calls a smart borders. In early 2026, Israel announced a $1.7 billion project to construct a wall on the borders within Syria and Jordan. Reports indicate that the 500 kilometers of AI-monitored walls using drones, ground reports, and sensor networks are being installed, stretching from the southern Golan Heights to the Sama Dunes near Eilat, Israel's southern tip. The new security barrier is being linked to the Sufa 53 project, which is a military road running parallel to the ceasefire line that Israel began constructing in mid-2022. And this isn't the first time. Israel has long been criticized for its use of artificial intelligence in Gaza, including identify bombing targets, and in the occupied West Bank, it has been used for facial recognition, cameras to track, target, and restrict millions of Palestinians' daily movement. Radwan said the construction of the smart border is intended to strengthen security as Israel plans to expand settlement in Katsarim. Last month, the Israeli cabinet passed a rule to move 3,000 settler families into the Golan Heights by 2030. Israel is not just moving the borders, the scale of movement suggests it is attempting to reshape it. Politically, the endgame is increasingly clear. Israeli finance minister and settlement enthusiast Bezalel Smotrich said it plainly.
Yeah, these bastards.
Smotrich added that this would expand Israel's borders alongside similar operations in the Gaza Strip and Lebanon. Operations that now reportedly account for more than 1,000 square kilometers of territory gained through land grabs and incursions. A calculation by the Financial Times put the land grab at roughly 5% of Israel's 1949 borders. Defense Minister Israel Katz dubbed down, Israel will not move a millimeter from Syria. Since the Assad government collapsed, the international community has largely looked away as Israel continues to carry out unprecedented military expansions into southern Syria. There's a pattern that feels very familiar, and for many Syrians, the question is no longer whether Israel is intending to stay. It's whether anyone with the power to stop it is paying any attention.
Yeah, exactly. Because like everything else, though, who's going to hold them accountable? Well, you know, unless that becomes part of the deal between Iran and the U.S., which, you know, that's bullshit as well. See, there's a new broker that's going to be in town, Gog and Magog. Ultimately, he's just getting everything ready for the Most High, you know, when he intervenes and comes in and totally takes out Esau Edom, which includes the rest of the Russians that are there. Right now, he's using the Medes to come against Babylon, and the Persians as well. That's why they can't really do anything about Iran. Cafe bombing kills 9, wounds 22 in busy court area of central Damascus. Gee, you know, I wonder who it could be. Those expanding Mossad agents using what they can to stir up shit? Of course. It's Mossad. On Thursday, a bomb ripped through the crowd cafe in central Damascus, killing at least 9 people and wounding 22 others, especially when you got ISIS in control of the country. Al Jazeera correspondent Hito reported from the scene in the aftermath, stated that the casualties are higher because it's such a busy area. Death toll could rise, that many bystanders are being treated for severe injuries at Damascus Hospital. I mean, these same people that blew up pagers in Beirut. I mean, they wouldn't do something like this, right? Various groups, including ISIS, continue to threat civilians across the country. Well, you got ISIS running it. A reality which has only expanded in the post-Assad Syria. After the rise of U.S.-backed self-appointed President al-Jilani, former al-Qaeda and Islamic State commander, which is ISIS, government forces under al-Jilani have been seen as tolerating, even cooperating at times with ISIS because they are ISIS. But at the same time, the Shara government has sought to present itself outside the world as moderate. There ain't no such thing as moderate. You're either a terrorist or you're not a terrorist. And all the terrorists point back to Babylon and, of course, the Israeli state, because they're the ones that hire terrorists. Thousands of Kurdish fighters joined ranks of the new Syrian army, aka ISIS. Agreement was reached to incorporate Kurdish fighters into Syrian army. It's not the Syrian Arab Army, that was what it was called under Assad, but the new Syrian army, which is ISIS, after weeks of fighting in January, in which the Syrian Democratic Forces lost 80% of its territory. See, like everything else, a betrayal of the Syrian Democratic Forces, because they got ISIS, Hayat al-Shem, in there. So they don't need Syrian Democratic Forces anymore, so they have to mold into the new Syrian government, which is Hayat al-Shem. Around 6,000 members of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces have been integrated into the new Syrian army as part of an agreement signed between the group and Damascus earlier this year. So, like everything else, 6,000 SDF members and officers in Al-Haskal Gamarate in the city of Al-Anab have joined the ranks of the Syrian army and begun receiving their salaries. So, pretty much though, the new Syrian army. And you got this going on, because Turkey is next. But you got, Egypt and Turkey, which are threats under the Israeli state, next after they're dealing with Iran. Egypt and Turkey signed an agreement to enhance cooperation on strategic transport corridors. See, that's a threat to Greater Israel. Egypt and Turkey signed a memorandum of understanding. The wording is so similar. You see why they're going after them, right? Aimed at strengthening cooperation in the use of maritime routes and regional and international transport corridors as both countries seek to improve connectivity between Asia, Africa, and Europe. Agreement was signed during a meeting with Egyptian Deputy Minister and Minister of Transport and Turkish Minister of Transport and Infrastructure on the sidelines of the Turkish Maritime Summit. According to Egypt's Ministry of Transport, the memorandum focuses on expanding cooperation in the use of strategic trade routes, including middle corridor. See, what it all comes down at the very end is that the Israeli state wants control of Turkey as well. They could not have the Greater Israel project if Turkey still remains in their way. It's always been about that. They want to control everything. They want everything. They want it all. He called for transport cooperation among Egypt, Turkey, Syria, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, particularly in maritime railway infrastructure. So you see what's going to cause this war. The Israeli state trying to still have, to take over all of it. And they're going to fight against them. They're going to, which includes Russia, which the scriptures talk about. But Babylon the Great, it's a ticking time bomb, and it's about to be made desolate. And their desolation is being determined, as we read here in the scriptures. So, like everything else, though, Trump, well, he's getting everything ready. He's getting everything ready because these nations are all going to take a parable against Edom. They're all going to take a parable against Babylon, a fanner of nations, as Jeremiah chapter 51 goes into. And like everything else, though, they are going to take spoils from her, meaning that they're ultimately going to destroy Babylon the Great, by firing their missiles upon this place. Babylon the Great ain't going to be around much longer, so that's why they have to usher in their new world order before this takes place. Jeremiah chapter 51, and it reads, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I am going to stir up and put into action a fury against Babylon, and against the rebellious people of Lebkemah, aka Chaldea, a destroying wind and hostile spirit." So there's going to be civil unrest, chaos everywhere, as well as just everybody angry with Babylon. A destroying wind and hostile spirit. Ultimately, the missiles are coming. And I will send foreigners to Babylon that may winnow her, and may desolate and empty her land. For in the day of destruction they will be against her on every side, which include their allies. Do not let them, the Chaldean defender who bends his bow, bend it, nor let him rise up his coat of armor. So do not spare her young men, devote her entire army to destruction. Ultimately, America's firepower is not going to be very good. They shall fall down dead in the land of the Chaldeans and wounded in their streets. That is, men shall fall in their streets and shall be cut off in that day, saith the Lord of hosts. For neither Israel nor Judah has been abandoned by his power, the Lord of hosts. Though their land is full of sin and guilt, behold, the Holy One of Yashar'Allah. Flee out of Babylon, let every one of you save his life. Do not be destroyed in her punishment. That's talking about the elect. For this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He is going to pay her what she has earned. Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hands, intoxicating all the earth. The nations drink her wine. Therefore the nations have gone mad. Pretty much so. Anybody that's been in bed with Babylon, that has pretty much gone along with Babylon, well, they've been infected with Babylon. Babylon has suddenly fallen and is shattered. Wail for her, if you care to. Get balm for her incurable pain. Perhaps she may be healed. ultimately it's going to be in utter ruin. It's going to be destroyed. We would have healed Babylon, but she will not be healed. Abandon her and let each captive return to his own country. For her guilt and judgment have reached unto heaven and are lifted up to the very skies, ultimately by that nuclear destruction. So there's no good news for Babylon as this video goes into. So hopefully this has been edifying. Then I want to say, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakal Kadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakatam, Jehovah Elect, Shalom.
And when he was demanded of the Pharisees when the kingdom of God should come, he answered them and said, the kingdom of God cometh not with observation, neither shall they say, lo here, or lo there, or behold. The kingdom of God is within you. The tabernacle of the Most High, the kingdom, tabernacle of the Most High is with men. But the tabernacle of the Most High is like the temple of the Most High. That's the kingdom, right? It's with men, so that means we got the knowledge. We already have the tabernacle of the Most High. We already got the kingdom. We already have it. Spiritually, we have it. But the physical part is going to come. The physical manifestation of it is going to come soon.
Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord.
The kingdom of the Most High is within you. So you brothers, the ones that are sincere brothers, y'all heard what the scripture said, the kingdom of the Most High is within you. So we already got the kingdom. So the kingdom was given to us back in Matthew 25 when Yahushua came. The knowledge is truth. That's why this knowledge is nothing to play with. Remember that the Lord didn't bless you with the kingdom already. It's within you. To the glory of our golden age, may it shine forever.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Abadash, double honor to the apostles and the elders to the midst, the rule well, people of everybody, time before them, brothers, peace and blessings and salutations, and hopefully that the Christian word of truth and in sincerity of four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Abadash, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful leg of believers, the listeners, and that came back to the obedience of the scriptures we faith in Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. All right, what I want to get into, all right, with this lesson. You know, no good news for America, all right? No good news for, all right, Babylon the Great, okay? Because when you go into the scriptures, matter of fact, we just get straight to the business. Let's go to the book of Numbers, chapter 23, and verse 19. It's Numbers 23 and 19, it says, the Most High is not a man that he should lie, neither the Son of Man that he should repent. Hath he said, and shall he not do it? Or hath he spoken, and shall he not make it good? Okay? And understand that we serve a power that does exactly what he says, all right? That does everything that he says he's going to do. Okay, so if it's written, you can hang your head on it. Okay, that's why the scriptures say they that are troubled rest with us. And when do we rest in? What truth? You see, the end of our captivity is written. We can rest in it. That's why the elect are comforted in these times. He says that Howard Shah promised that he would send back the comforter, okay, which is the Holy Spirit. That gives us an understanding of the book. Because without the Holy Spirit, the Bible is not a comforter unto us. Okay, but when we have the Holy Spirit, okay, the comforter activates what we read these words of comfort now. Okay, and you Americans, it's easy, you simple, all right, dumbed down, okay, backwards Americans, okay, there's no good news for America, okay, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat, Republic, okay, it doesn't matter if you try to do style of government, nothing is, you can't figure out, because it's already slated, okay, it's already written for destruction, okay, the destruction of America is baked in, you know, we always go into that, that's my new term now, baked in, all right, so when you go into it, you get it again, you see, baked in, we're gonna come back to this and get into the word. So when you go here, so you mean baked in because of the destruction of America, all right, it's already baked in to existence. All right. The term baked in, the phrase baked in means a feature, concept, or expectation is already included Okay, so the destruction of America, the expectation of it is already included as a fundamental, permanent part of something and cannot be easily removed. It implies that the element it implies that the element is inseparable from the overall design of the situation. So American destruction is inseparable. Okay. Well, we're seeing when you read the scriptures, all right, and the Lord, all right, speaks about the destruction of America. Well, that's baked into prophecy. Ain't no changing it. It's inseparable. Okay, that's a expectation. All right, a permanent part of something that cannot be removed. It says cannot easily be removed. Well, you can take the easily out. It cannot be removed. Okay, so the destruction of America is baked in, and it's all throughout the scriptures, man. You know, so when you go back into, all right, the book of Numbers, chapter 23 and 19, when you get, let's get in the NLT. So here, I got a little clip. I want to play. Let's see. Yep, this is Numbers 23 and 19 in the NLT. It said, the Most High is not a man, so he does not lie. He is not human, so he does not change his mind. Has he ever spoken and failed to act? Has he ever promised and not carried through? So the Most High promised that he was going to destroy America. And even before he destroys the nuclear missiles, man, there's going to be a time like never before, and the planet Earth is coming to America, man. You see? So the goal here is Jeremiah 49.
A due date.
Okay, we always keep Jeremiah 49. All right, this is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 49, in verse 13. Said, for I have sworn by myself, said the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Shah, that Basra shall become a desolation, a reproach, a waste, and a curse, and all the cities shall be a perpetual waste. And this speaking of America, Basra is America, man. Basra representing the chief city, all right, during the time of Edom, you know, in the land of Edom. Okay, when they was in their land, and it was to the south of land of Judah. Okay, but when Edom was in their original land, okay, over there, what they call the Middle East now, the Western Asia, ultimately around their fertile crescent. But Edom original land, you had this city Basra, that was the chief city in Edom. It's like America's the chief city. America's in the Bible, America's like into one big city, that great city. Okay, so the chief place of Esau's empire is America, which is likened into Basra. Okay, so the Lord promised by himself, he swore by himself, that Basra shall become a desolation, a reproach, a waste, and a curse, and all the cities thereof shall be perpetual waste. You know, so the Lord has made a promise concerning America. Okay, he has made a promise concerning you Edomites. Okay, you're going in captivity, you're going to be done away with after 1,000 years. That's a promise. You see, ain't no good news for America, ain't no good news for you Edomites. Okay, and like I say, part of our good news is America going to be destroyed. You see, that's a part of our good news. Matter of fact, let's get that in Revelation 18. All right, then we'll be ready to stay over to this big video. Okay, this is the book of Revelation, chapter 18, and in verse 20. It says, rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for the Most High have avenged you on her, and that her is America. Okay, so we're part of our joy, the part of our expectation is America being destroyed. See, that's part of the gospel, the good news for the elect of Israel. That's part of our good news. You see? So you Americans are trying to be optimistic, you know, thinking that all right, something's going to change the trajectory that y'all on. No, the Lord got America on the trajectory to be nuked. Okay? No, America done kicked all this dust up in the world, been a bully to these nations. Now these nations are starting to bully America, man. Okay? Small hats over off the chain and drug America into the war. Okay, and gonna continue to escalate this war until America get nuked, man. You see? And leading up to that, man, America's gonna be the worst place to be on the planet Earth, man. Alright, it's gonna be civil unrest, violence gonna be off the chain. Matter of fact, verse 21, it says, and a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall the great city Babylon be thrown down and shall not be found no more at all. Yeah, it's gonna start with eternal violence, civil war, civil unrest, okay, anarchy. You see, and it's gonna continue to escalate, all right, eternally, and then externally you're gonna have this war escalate to the nukes or something over here. Okay, so there's no good news for you Americans, man. You got nothing to look forward to.